I'm Max Sterling. Welcome to LARPgasm. Today we're going to give this dollar store notebook a workover. We're going to give it a fake leather cover, and we're also going to be going in and antiquing these pages. Now they're lined, but you know, you'll just have to live with that. This is basically everything you're going to need. You're going to need your notebook, some glue, white glue, something to mix on, some toilet paper, and some water. Alright, so you shouldn't need a lot of toilet paper since this is a small notebook. So get a little bit of that, set it aside, and then get your glue. I took the lid off so it would come out easier. And then go ahead and, you know, get a good amount here on your plate. That's probably way too much for what we're needing for here, but that's fine. You're going to get some of your water, spill it on there, and then what you're going to do is you're going to mix it into a paste-like consistency. Not that glue isn't already a paste-like consistency. Okay, so now that you have this real runny glue going on here, you're going to take your toilet paper, just kind of put a little bit in at a time, let it soak it up so it gets like this. Make sure it's completely soaked, and then the idea is you just take and lay it on your book. Now there's a lot of different ways to do this to make it have sort of like a fake leather look, but this is going to be probably your least expensive way of doing this. The type of toilet paper does make a difference. You're just going to have to sort of experiment with what you have in your bathroom and then work your way from there. I'm going to go ahead and keep spreading this out. The idea is get it pushed, you know, as flat as you can onto that cover. So this is what you're going to end up with. It's going to look like wet toilet paper on top of your cover. If you get over the edges, don't worry about it. You can always cut it or sand it off later, but you're going to want to let this dry, and it's going to take a long time to dry. Pro tip, do this on a sunny day. You can leave it sit outside and dry. If you do this in your house and it's humid in there, it's going to take forever, I mean days to dry, and it's going to warp and it's going to be all jacked up. So find a hot surface and do this. I would not suggest microwaving or putting in your oven. So once you get both sides done, this is kind of what you have. So it's going to be an extremely rough looking leather, or you know, dragon hide, or whatever you want to call it on your journal. You definitely want to make sure, like I said, there's plenty of heat. Either put this in front of a dehumidifier, find a sunny day, hold a hairdryer on it, whatever you got to do. But you're not going to want to let it sit around, because if not, the book's going to warp and do all kinds of other stuff. I mean, sure, there's other ways of doing this, but this is a very inexpensive way. Let me go ahead and see about getting these pages stained and burned to look older, and then we'll go ahead and go into paint. Okay, so if you're doing this right, then now you have a shit paper covered warped notebook from water damage. Alright, you're going to go through and break all the pages, make sure that they're not stuck together. Some of mine were. But then the next step is going to be simply just to grab a few of the pages and, you know, strategically burn some edges. Now whenever you burn these, be careful, because even after you blow it out, it may look like the fire's out, but it'll still continue to burn a little bit and creep down on you. So if you burn, like, say, a 1/16 of an inch, it may keep burning the whole way to like an 1/8 or a 1/4. So just keep this in check. So let's move on to the next step, antiquing these pages. And the reason why I do the burning first is because if you antique and then burn, you're always going to have this ash and it's going to smell. If you do the burning first and then antique it, it washes away all the ash. So it makes it a little bit easier to use, more user-friendly. Pro tip, if you want to add just a little bit of embellishment on here before you antique it with the coffee and tea, hit it with the flame straight on for a moment. See how it's starting to turn? Boom. Don't let it actually catch fire. There. Now you have a nice flame fingerprint on your book. Maybe an elemental touched it. Oops. Pro tip, been a little over aggressive with burning a hole in the middle of your page? Well, guess what? Journals with missing pages are cool too. Take that page, rip out the bottom part, burn along the whole thing. Now if someone's scoping out your journal or your spell book or whatever you're using this for, they're going to come across half a missing page and wonder what was ever on it. Cool. Pro tip, unless you like sleeping under the stars and you don't want to burn your fucking house down, after you do all this, because you're not sure that this fire is out in any of these pages, make sure you let this thing sit outside for a little while. Just enough time to make sure that there's no fire hazard. If you're going to move directly into pouring tea or coffee on it, you're probably okay. If not, I'd leave this thing sit outside on your porch for at least, 10-15 minutes, just to make sure it's not going to spontaneously combust. Okay, so we got our nice sunny day. Now I mixed up this instant coffee. You should know how to mix instant coffee. If you don't know how to mix instant coffee, you can watch my video on how to make a easy tunic. You put powdered coffee in water and shake it up. I mean, if you use warm water, it's probably going to be a little bit better than if you use cold water, but that's pretty much it. So, we got our book all burned up from yesterday. There's a couple ways to do this. You could take a paintbrush or a cotton ball or a sponge or something along those lines, and you can do each page individually, front and back. Or, considering how time consuming that would be, you could just take and pour this all over it, which is what I'm going to do since I have a nice warm day. You're not going to get uniform coverage. Some of the pages may still end up having white spots on them, but you know what? It is what it is. If you want to go through and do each page individually, I mean, that's good on you. I'm just trying to make a cheap, quick journal or magic spell book. If you want to make it and take time to do it a little bit better, go through, burn each individual page, put marks on them, so on and so forth, I mean, that's up to you. So as far as this is concerned, I mean, this is not rocket science. We're going to take coffee and we're just going to pour it right on there. Now if you use tea, it's going to come out lighter than if you use coffee, because coffee is going to make it pretty dark. Well, like I said, you can do it whichever way you want. Okay, so I got the book done. I have it face down because I ended up inevitably getting a bunch of liquid on our fake leather that we did on the outside here, which is fine. I mean, we're going to paint that anyways. But as far as the inside of the book, you can see we got pretty good coverage on the pages. Now like I said, you're going to need to let this dry. The binding's coming apart a little bit, which is fine. We'll probably just have to glue that back together, but that's not a big deal. So I'm going to have to leave this dry for quite a while. So I'm going to let this out here until this dries up a little bit, and then we'll flip it and start letting the pages dry. If it seems like it's taking a long time, I'll take it inside and set it in front of my dehumidifier that I have, and that should dry it out pretty quick. So, now that we've let this dry, we can see that we have the texture on the outside, we have all of our stained pages and burned pages on the inside, If your binding happens to come loose, you can always use hot glue to glue everything back in. This actually came a little bit loose, so I had to put some hot glue just to keep the pages inside of here. But that'll hold it, and I think it turned out pretty well. So the next part is to paint this to make it look like leather. Now, if you've been following up until this point, you know, we're going for a very cheap solution here. Now, you could just use paint and like some crumpled paper and just push on it, and it'll give it a leather sort of look. If you want it to have that three-dimensional texture, though, then you're going to need something like this. So, you're going to want to go ahead and get some colors. Now, you can do dark browns and reds. You can do light khakis and whites. You can throw some oranges and yellows in there to warm it up. Whatever you think looks good. If you want to do something completely off the wall and say it's like dragon hide, then you can paint it whatever color you want. We're going to go a little bit traditional here, and we'll go with some dark brown. And a little bit of red, dark red, almost like a crimson. So when you sort of look at these colors I have here, you notice that they're actually kind of similar. The red almost looks like a brown. And then we can just sort of mix those together to get the sort of color that we want here. And then simply start applying it. So of course I had, you know, the perfect amount of paint just to do this side. Obviously I'm the one doing the tutorial here. However, like I said, if you don't have enough, just mix up a little bit more. If you have too much, like I said, the paint's cheap, so you don't have to be sad that you have to throw it away. Or if you have another project that you need to touch something up on, go ahead and use this to touch it up. Alright. So that's that. Now we're going to let this dry and see what it looks like. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in probably with a actual brown, a beige, and maybe a khaki. And I also have a sort of parchment color here as well. And I'm probably going to hit this up with those. If you want the actual colors I just use for that color, it's chocolate bar and barn red. These are the two colors I mixed at basically a 50-50 ratio, maybe a 60-40 on the brown, but it was pretty close to even to get this color. So if you think that that looks like a good leather color to you, then that's great. On the back, I actually already did it. I did a lighter color. So this was simply I believe brown. It was a light brown by itself, and this is the color I got. So it's really up to you sort of what shade of leather you're looking to go with here. I'm going to do the darker side, we'll do the lighter side, see which one we think looks better, and then I can just come back and paint over top of the side that we don't like and even it up. When it's all said and done, I'm also going to put, I believe, some corners on it as well. But for now, we'll let that dry. Oh, the only thing left to do now is to hit it up with Plasti Dip Glossifier. That's going to give it sort of a shiny look and also protect the book. You could use just clear coat, but I'm going to use the Plasti Dip in hopes that it holds everything together a little bit better. If you had areas that were sticking up real high, you could use glue to cover them and then just paint right back over top of it. I had one or two small spots that I just put a dab of glue on and then held it down and it fixed it right up. Just going to clear coat this now and then we'll show you the final product. So this is how our journal turned out. you can see that after we applied the Plasti Dip glossifier to it, that it gave it a sort of glossy, shiny finish to it. Now it actually sort of looks like a leather. I mean, a very evil looking leather, something probably that Necronomicon might be made out of, but gives an awesome texture. Depending on your paint job, I mean, your results are going to vary, but I happen to think it looks pretty darn cool with your burnt pages inside and stained. Now I happen to leave this elastic bit on the back so I could close my book up if I wanted to, because these pages are going to have a tendency to spring for a long time because of the fact that we let them dry. If you don't like this elastic because it's not period, well, you can always cut it right off of there or use a journal that doesn't have that. Now, as far as the longevity of this, if you keep it dry, you know, don't rub it on a lot of things, it'll probably last a long time. Something like this is meant to be more of a prop, more so than a functional thing. So if you took this, did a whole bunch of writings inside and then set it somewhere as a prop to be found, it would work better than an actual travel journal or a spell book. However, you can certainly use it for either of those, but be prepared to have to touch it up from time to time with either more toilet paper, glue, or paint and more glossifier. But I think you get some use out of this. If you have pages that still have some white showing through, you can go through the paintbrush and some tea or coffee and fix those so that they're all, you know, more uniform. But that's it. So, spellbook or LARP journal on a budget. The entire thing was probably around $2 or $3. The important thing is, if you bought everything that you need, you now have enough equipment to make tons of these. So any old books you have laying around, if you want to go buy some more of these dollar notebooks, you can make a ton of these things with the items that you have. One final thing you may want to add to your book is just these corners. Now you can buy these at a craft store. I got mine online, but basically these just go right on the corners of the book. So it gives it a little bit of age. Now I'm going to age these with some black paint. They make lots of interesting and cool ones. They're already aged. They're much larger, much smaller, depending on the size you want. I thought that these were a good size for this particular book. I'm going to go ahead and age those, put them on with some glue, and show you the final product. Take your time and you too can have this flesh-bound spell book or journal, whichever you choose to refer to it as, ancient with knowledge and power, and very cheap to make. I'm Max Sterling. Until next time, adventure on. Oh, right. The words. Klaatu Verata. Oh. It was definitely an S word. S-mart? No. I got it. Klaatu Verata. Subscribe now.